Thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Heather Knoll, and I am the program coordinator at Sustainable Woodstock. Founded in 2009, Sustainable Woodstock is a not-for-profit community and environmental action and education organization. We exist to lead our communities through the climate emergency, empowering Woodstock and the rest of the Upper Valley to meet climate commitments and live sustainably through advocacy, education, and collaboration. And this event is part of our Green Drink series, and Green Drinks are social events to connect people who have similar interests. And our next Green Drinks event is a sustainable crafting and community gathering on December 7th in Taftsville. And I will put that link in the chat in case you would like to join us. There we go. And before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to just talk about our format for the evening. This is mostly a Q&A, and we will be taking our questions in the chat. To enter your question, type them into the chat box at the side of your screen. And if you don't see the chat box on the side, go to the bottom of the Zoom screen and click on chat, and it should pop up on the side there. And if you have any issues with the chat, feel free to wave your hands and I will try to help. Now, I am delighted to welcome our speaker this evening. Ham Gillett is the outreach coordinator for 2 solid waste districts and has 20 years of experience in solid waste and recycling. Ham helped start a small solid waste recycling company when Woodstock first mandated recycling in 1991. He has sorted through trash containers at the National Mall in the heat of summer, measured rotting restaurant food waste in the South Bronx, and run multiple red lights while following a trash truck through downtown Hartford, Connecticut at rush hour. Ham is a certified Vermont master composter and a founding member of P.U.T.R.I.D, People Uncovering Treasures Rotting in Dumpsters. Welcome, Ham.
Thank you. Thank you. I apologize for the hat. I am in my office in Ascutney, and as I said to Heather, I think that the programmable thermostat has shut off for the night. So I'm bundled up. Anyway, thank you all for coming. This is great. And I will remind you that this is like a cocktail hour. So if any of you would like to turn on your videos, I would love to see some faces. I don't care if you're eating, picking spinach out of your teeth, or what. But thank you, Susan. I would be happy to see some faces. As Heather said, I'm going to I want this to be mostly a question and answer period. I can talk a little bit, but I find that when I do these things, normally somebody will ask a question and then we're sort of off and it's the hour has gone by and we still haven't covered everything. But I've reached the point where I don't want to talk. I figure a lot of you probably know everything I have to say, but I know that there are always questions and frustrations about recycling, and so let me have your questions. And if you don't come up with any questions, I will talk, but I would prefer to talk to answer your questions. And so anyway, open the gates.
All right, we've already got some great questions here. Barbara would like to know, are yogurt containers with 5 pp on the bottom recyclable? And what does PP under the recycle triangle mean?
PP stands for polypropylene, and that's a type of plastic. Good question. The Universal Recycling Law in Vermont requires us all to recycle 1 and 2 plastic. And I think you all know what that is. It's the PET clear water bottles, and the number two is your milk jugs and your detergent bottles. Um, Casella Waste, which services a good part of Vermont, uh, runs a facility called a Materials Recovery Facility, or a MRF for short. And I will just jump in here and say that if you want to see a fascinating 4-minute video on what happens to your recyclables in the sorting facility, Google Casella MRF tour and you will see it.
I'll try and include
So,
it in our follow-up email too, so
yeah,
everyone check it
thank
out.
you. And so, Casella takes number five. So you have to figure out where you're taking your recyclables. Are they ending up in Casella's facility? And if so, you can you can put your yogurt containers in. Now, I happen to know that Able Waste, which runs a fast trash in Bridgewater and Heartland, they do not want number fives because they're not required by the state. I have an issue with that, but it's their business, and you if you use them, you might ask them and suggest that maybe they could start, but they are not required to take number fives. So yes, Barbara, you can recycle your number fives depending on where your recycling is ending up. And you can, if you want to, if you want to tell me right now, I can tell you where your stuff is going, but I don't know where you take your stuff.
Wait just a second to see if Barbara wants to let us know. Okay,
All right.
so let's take
All
a
right.
question
Well,
from Richard here.
we can move on.
I know it is better to decrease plastic use rather than recycle, but what is the fate of the plastic recycled at this center? Is including non-recyclable plastic a big problem? Contaminated plastic that's not sufficiently clean.
Yeah, there are several reasons why your plastic recycling gets contaminated. One is if you put in a half a jar of peanut butter or an unemptied thing of ketchup. So you want to, I mean, I know people who actually run their recyclables through the dishwasher, totally unnecessary, but it does get everything clean. You basically want to rinse it out. I was working up in the a sorting facility, recycling facility in Burlington a number of years ago, doing a study. And we went in at 4:30 when the trucks had all stopped and everything had shut down. And there were these huge, huge stacks of piles of recycling. And I looked up and there were just rats crawling all over the piles. And which is one reason why they like you to rinse out your material, but it can have a little bit of stuff in it. The worst thing about contaminating is putting the wrong kind of recyclables in. Um, and we have gotten into this fix because we just thought in this country decided that single stream recycling is so convenient for us, but it also leads us to wish cycle, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, and that is uh, looking at something and saying, "Oh, I'm not sure if this is recyclable, but I'm going to throw it in here because they'll put it in the trash if it isn't." That's a bad way to operate because it's one of the reasons that China several years ago stopped taking any plastics from this country because our plastics were there was a lot of stuff in there that couldn't be recycled. So um, the mantra is, when in doubt, throw it out. And it may end up in the landfill, but it's better for it to go to the landfill than it is for you to contaminate an entire load of plastics. Um, glad you brought up that question because there is an attitude I'm sensing from the public right now that there's why are we bothering to recycle? Because we hear so much of this is going in the trash, in the landfill, and it's true. What we recycle is based on the markets, and the market fluctuates a lot. Cardboard is a perfect example. At one point, cardboard can pay the hauler. They can get like $180 a ton, and then 2 months later, 3 months later, they're getting paid $20 or having to pay to get rid of it. It all depends on the demand, the public demand. So I always say to people, please don't stop recycling. Because if we tell everybody to stop, we'll never get people to start again. And the dynamics of the recycling industry will change. There are facilities being built all over this country to handle the new kinds of recycling, lithium batteries, whatever. I know we are inundated with plastic, but just if don't try to recycle 5, 6, and 7 unless you know that your hauler will take it. Put it in the trash. Just do 1s and 2s and 5s if your Casella does your trash. Hope that answers your question.
That's great. Thank you, Ham. So Barbara's wondering, where do I dispose of broken portable dehumidifiers?
Uh, a dehumidifier or a humidifier? I missed that.
Dehumidifier.
Dehumidifier. Um, you can take those to the Hartford transfer station. Um, they will charge you. It is an electronic, but it's not a covered electronic under the state program. So it will get recycled as much as possible. They also might charge you for freon removal. And I would call them ahead of time. The scale house number, maybe we can put that in the chat, is 295 2673. And if you call, you'll talk to Nick or Tom, and they can tell you how much they would charge you for it. But that's the best thing to do.
All right. Oh, this is a great question. Why do transfer stations have such different rules about what is recycled, particularly asking about paper categories?
Oh, uh, interesting. There are transfer stations that ask you to sort your material. Uh, Hartford is one of those. I believe Lebanon is one of those. And I'm not sure, maybe we could get clarification on what specifically kinds of paper you're talking about. But normally, um, I know, for instance, the Norwich transfer station, I think, has a separate container for cardboard only. And then they have another for waste paper. The reason for that is that they can get more money for a clean load of cardboard than they can if the cardboard is covered with ketchup or peanut butter or whatever. So when your transfer station is asking you to sort materials, they're using a broker to sell that material. And the cleaner the product is, the more money they're going to get for that. If I'm not quite answering that question, I'm happy to say more, but I think that's the question.
I think that this is a clarification. Lebanon takes soda beer boxes, but our local Grantham station will not accept them.
Okay, then that's dictated by where where the material is going. So um, if you're if the if the end destination for that material doesn't want beverage carriers, then they will say that to the hauler, and then the hauler or the transfer station will say, sorry, we can't take it. Trying to think of a good example. Well, for instance, I think up in Chittenden County, perhaps they take all plastics 1 through 7, and that's because their hauler, their facility has a market for all those. The market dictates everything.
Got it. So Deborah is wondering if glass scented candles are recyclable.
No, that, I think you're asking about the glass specifically. Um, Again, it depends on where you take your material. Um, at the Thetford transfer station, they are taking all sorts of glass, ceramics, plate glass, because that glass is being ground up and made into glass. It's called PGA, glass pulverized. That's not the right word. It's basically it's ground up glass. It's being used in road construction and sidewalk construction. If your glass at wherever you're taking your stuff, if your glass is going to be made into insulation or more glass, then they don't want the plates and the flower pots in it. They just want container glass. So I would say that glass candle would not be considered container glass. That's my take on it.
Got it. Okay, so Susan is asking plastic bag or bag-like things. Grocers say they accept them for recycling, but there's so many different kinds, and often I finally find a note on the bag that it is recyclable, but not at most places. Is there a clear way to know which are the easiest to recognize bags to recycle and which are most likely not recyclable?
If you push your thumb into the bag and it stretches, that should be recyclable. If it's crinkly, um, trying to think of an example, but if it's crinkly and it tears, that's not recyclable. That's the easiest way. And again, if you have a question about it, better to throw it in the trash or use it for something else than putting it in. But if you can stretch the plastic with your thumb, um, that's recyclable.
Right.
But don't put it in with your do not put it in with your single stream recycling, because when that material goes to the sorting facility in Rutland, it gets tangled up in the machinery and they have to shut everything down and pull it out. So if you want to recycle your plastic, we call it plastic film. Um, I think Lebanon is now taking it, the Lebanon landfill, or take it to your local grocery store. The big chain stores will take it, like Hannaford's and Shaw's. Others don't.
I also, Ham, I'm going to jump in because the Woodstock folks just told me the Woodstock High School is collecting that film to get a free bench. You know,
Yes,
how if you collect enough of it, they'll give you a free bench made out of the repurposed film. And
yes.
they're like really close. So if you have a lot of it, Woodstock High School will want it.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
great. Okay, so Rika is asking, are the pour boxes that milks, soups, etc. come in recyclable?
No. Um, the milk cartons used to be coated in wax. They're now coated in plastic. To my knowledge, they are not recyclable, and the aseptic boxes that soup come in, or rice milk or whatever, again, not recyclable. There are too many different materials in that container. I myself I drink rice milk, and I drive when I get a huge bag of it and I'm going to visit my sister in Schenectady, I take it to her because her recycling takes it, supposedly.
Okay, this is a great question, Deborah. My dog food cans don't come clean even with hot water and a brush. Do they go in the trash or recycle bin?
Mm, that's a really good question. Um, if they don't come clean with a brush and hot water, um, I would say probably they're not going to come clean in a like recycling plant, like a what I want to say, going through the machinery of a in a sorting process. I'm wondering if you could maybe soak the can in some water overnight and make it, I don't know what your dog food is, but you might try doing that, just leaving it soak. Otherwise, I would throw in the trash.
And are prescription bottles recyclable? I'm assuming these are empty.
Hmm. Um, no, they're not because of the 2-inch rule. The conveyor belts at the sorting facilities, they're metal conveyor belts, and they're metal grating, kind of like that. And the spaces in between are 2 inches. So if you put anything in your trash that's smaller than 2 inches in either direction, it can fall through the space in the conveyor belt and again get jammed up in the machinery. So they are not. I have collected bags of them at my house and put them out. I live in Windsor, and we do the Great Windsor giveaway twice a year. People just put out stuff at the end of their driveway, and we have a Google map telling where all the places are. And you just drive around and pick up stuff for free. I have had bags of empty medicine bottles disappear from that. So I don't know if it's just a hoarder or what, but people can store little things in them, buttons or sparkles or whatever. But they're not recyclable.
Great, thank you. So Fred says, Ham, I assist a community library that takes VHS tapes and DVDs as part of their accepting donations. Are there any local regional options for recycling?
No. I know that the Listen store takes DVDs and CDs. I would check with somebody before you drop them off, but I know that they have a whole library full of them. They are not. I just had somebody ask me about it the other day. There's a company called Green Disc, and they're based in Michigan, I think. And they will accept those materials and they will recycle them, but it's expensive. I think it's like $75 for a box. But what I tell somebody just asked me this yesterday, I tell people that if you really don't want to throw them away and you can get a group of friends and neighbors um, to go in on a box and you can split the cost, then it makes it much more doable. But most people do not have $75 lying around to spend on um, but check out their website, Green Disc.
Yes. I'll try and include that in our follow-up email for everybody as well.
Okay.
Okay, so Richard asks, what do you know of the ultimate fate of the plastic recycled at this center? I've read that about 10% is ever really reused.
Those are the same statistics that I've read, and pretty sad. But I think in general, there is always a market for 1 and 2 plastics, as long as they're not contaminated. And again, they're, we're everything we buy seems to be in plastic or have plastic in it or whatever. And it's impossible to live in this world without using plastic. But if you can buy in bulk, you're fortunate enough to be able to buy at go to a co-op and buy food. I would, recommend, highly urge you to do that. But it's sadly, yeah, the numbers are too small. Again, they're building more. Ironically, the Chinese are building recycling facilities in the United States. So that will help us.
So Deborah asks, are colored boxes used for food recyclable, like cereal, soda, or frozen food boxes?
Cereal, yes, cereal boxes are because they're not coated with anything. Frozen food, again, if it goes in your freezer, chances are it's got a plastic coating on it, and it is not. Like ice cream, one of my favorite foods. Uh, those containers are not recyclable.
Right. So Richard says, I tried taking some expired EpiPens to a hospital pharmacy to dispose of them, and they didn't want them. Their advice was to seal them in a plastic gallon jug and take it to the transfer station. What is your advice about how to dispose of such waste?
That is the correct way. If you have EpiPens or sharps or needles, put them in a like an empty detergent bottle, screw the top on tight, write in big letters on the container, sharps, not recyclable, and then they should go in your trash.
Oh, that's great. Food scraps recycling. Why is the cost so high? Does not the compost produced provide income? How much is sold and for what profit?
Wow. Um, it's expensive because of the labor involved. Um, Composting, you don't go into the composting business to get rich. Um, it's a very labor intensive and time intensive process. Um, and that's pretty much why it is expensive. I don't know who your hauler is. If you're taking it somewhere, um, you might check around and ask your neighbors what they're doing. Of course, I always recommend home composting, but a lot of people have bears and whatnot. Um, that's really the answer. And most people don't generate enough. Well, there aren't a lot of compost companies around. There's one called Music Mountain, which is based in Rochester. Um, I don't know what their issue is in terms of providing it to people who give them food scraps. The only system I know of that really works in that regard is I have a cousin who lives in Massachusetts, metropolitan Boston, and it's town-wide. You put your food scraps at the bottom of your driveway. A truck comes, picks it all up, it goes to a local farm, and it gets composted. And anybody in the town uh, can get a certain amount of compost for free. Um, but it's not it's a very expensive process to do it, and that's why I really try to encourage people to do it at home. Not a great answer, but that's your answer.
Thank you. So Valerie has a composting question. Composting at certain times of the year, I try to keep up with it, but inevitably I get maggots in the container. Any tricks to avoid?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I can answer that. If you have maggots, you're not putting enough carbon material in your pile. The rule for composting at home is for every container of food scraps that you put in your pile or your composter, you should put three of that same container's worth of brown material. That's the carbon. That can be dead shredded leaves, it can be pine needles, it can be dead mowed grass, anything that's brown. Straw, hay is okay, but hay will just have a lot of seeds in it. Sawdust, wood chips, anything like that. But your it sounds like your pile is too wet. And if you're putting meat scraps in there, do not do that if you're home composting because your pile will never get hot enough to kill the pathogens in the meat.
Great. So Cynthia asks, or says, compostables now are trash. Is there a company in New Hampshire or Vermont that will handle compostables?
I hate compostables. You're talking about compostable ware like cups and
I think
yeah.
so. Yeah.
Um, Music Mountain Compost will take compostable ware. I don't know, not sure how the system works, but they take it and they claim that it will break down. It takes a very long time. And I know they stopped taking it at the Burlington facility several years ago because it would not break down. If you insist on buying compostable ware, be sure that on the package it has a round circle that says BPI. And I can't even remember what that stands for, but that's the like universal signal symbol for yes, this is truly compostable. Um, if you can, I don't know. I'm a big reusable kind of guy. You go for a picnic, bring a plate and a spoon and a cloth napkin and your um, silverware, going to a party, having a party. It's washable. I'll give a plug for, hold on a sec, if I can find them. Oh, here we go. This is, I keep this with me. I carry them everywhere. This is called to-go ware. It is bamboo fork, knife, spoon, and chopsticks. You can get them at the co-op. They have a little thingy here where you can hang it on your keychain or on your pack. And if you get takeout, you never have to take a plastic spoon or a fork or knife again. I don't know why that's blurry, but it is. Ah, there we go. Anyway, to go where you get them online.
Nice. That's a great holiday gift idea.
Yes.
Okay, great question from Rika that I have also wondered about. Should we be removing the metal wine bottle collars and the plastic lock ring on glass beverage bottles?
No.
Great.
You can if you want, but you could cut yourself, and that will come off in the recycling process.
Okay, so at Lebanon, I see many, many clamshell shell containers in their plastic bin. What happens to them?
If they're all clear plastic, it's probably could be PET number one, or number five. and those will essentially be recycled and made into something, melted down or ground into, powder and then made into another material. That's a good question because it brings up the question of black plastic. Black plastic is not recyclable anywhere. Um, on the sorting on the conveyor belt in the sorting facility, it's the optical scanner cannot read it because it's black plastic on a black conveyor belt. More importantly, when it's combined with other colors of plastics, it turns everything gray, and nobody wants a gray plastic. So black plastic is not recyclable, even though it has a circle and a recycling symbol on the bottom. It is not recyclable.
Okay, so Deborah asks regarding the 2-inch rule, are spray bottles and wine bottles, etc., recyclable? And do we leave the caps on the bottles when recycling? In the past,
Wine,
it was always no, but recently I've heard otherwise.
wine bottles, definitely recyclable. Um, Caps on, caps off. I just had a question about that last week. I am told by the manager at the Casella facility, recycling facility, that you can leave your caps on. Don't put them in your recycling loose. If you're going to put them in your recycling, put them on, screw them onto the container so that they make it through the sorting process. And then in the breakdown process, they will be removed by the machinery. I I would rather throw mine in the trash myself, but Casella says go for it. So does that answer your question, Deborah? Okay.
Great. Okay, so Richard asks, do you have any way of guessing what percent of food waste is composted at home or at the transfer stations? We have bears. I understand it is required in Vermont, but I often wonder who is supposed to police that.
Me. It is required. It's part of the Universal Act 148 Vermont Universal Recycling Law. And I will tell you the reasons why. Some of you probably already know this. This is part of my spiel. The reason that the law was passed in different, in stages, is that Vermont has one landfill left. It's up in Coventry, which is about 10 minutes from Canada. Casella owns it. And no one in Vermont wants to build another landfill. They don't want it in their backyard. They can't afford it. So we're trying to extend the life of that landfill as long as we possibly can. So everything that is recyclable or reusable in any way, we do not want it in the landfill. Same goes for Lebanon. They're having to build a new cell. I'm told that Lebanon is actually going to excavate an existing closed cell and take all the recyclables out of it and recycle them to give them room for more trash. So that could be a rumor, but it came from a reliable source. So anyway, I don't know in terms of, they say that Americans generally throw out about I think it's about 35 or 40% of our trash in weight is food scraps. I don't know if I answered that question. I sort of got rambling.
You want me to read the question again?
Yeah, why don't you? I just don't want to leave it hanging.
Do you have any way of guessing what percent of food waste is composted at home or at the transfer stations? We have bears. I understand it is required in Vermont, but I often wonder who is supposed to police that.
Okay. So there's not a lot of policing going on. There's not a lot of enforcement going on, unfortunately. The enforcement that does happen is with large generators, with restaurants, schools, universities. Those are the people that we monitor, and if they aren't, we have to report them to the state, and then the state comes down and whatever. But in terms of if you have bears and you're taking your stuff to the transfer station, that is getting well, locally, I'm not sure where you're taking it, Fred, but it's ending up at the Lebanon landfill and it's being composted, but it's not being turned back into soil. It's being used for daily cover for the landfill. So um, it's not technically being made into nutrient new soil. But if you take it to if you take it to any transfer station anywhere in Vermont, it's going to go, normally it's going to go to a giant composting operation where they have these big, huge windrows. They get turned and they get up to 140, 160 degrees. And that's actually being made into honest to goodness compost.
Great. So why does Vermont have such sporadic hazardous waste collections? Do other states have places open year round to bring this waste?
Great question. Um, Vermonts are sporadic because they're so expensive. Up until 2 years ago, every solid waste district in the state was required to do four of them. We are now only required to do two. They cost us for a 4 hour collection event. We just did one last week at Hartford. The one we did in July, our bill was $42,000. Um, we were charged $16,000 just for the setup fee. That's for the crew to come down in their white Tyvek suits and lay down the tarps and everything. It's enormously expensive, and the prices have skyrocketed. There's only one hazardous waste vendor in the state of Vermont right now. They're based up in Williston. They're the ones who ran our collection event last week. We also use one that's outside of Boston. Really expensive. The stuff has to go, you wouldn't believe it. They drive it all over the country. Different materials get driven all over the country depending where there's a facility that will incinerate it or do whatever they do with it. That is why there are not more. There are places obviously in more highly populated areas and metropolitan areas where there are facilities that are open all year round and you just drive and drop it off. But that's not going to happen in Vermont. We're too small. I will tell you that actually that's not true. Chittenden Solid Waste District has a hazardous waste depot, which I think operates year round. I think also that happens in Addison County, but not around here. Springfield, from May to September, there is a hazardous waste drop-off depot on the Charlestown Road. It's open Tuesday and Thursday mornings by appointment. And you, residents of the Greater Upper Valley Solid Waste District, I hope you know who you are, or of the town of Springfield, can use that facility. And if you Google, I'm going to give you a phone number, actually. It's easier. Maybe you could put it in the chat, Heather. It's
Yeah.
Again, they're closed for the winter. They'll be opening up. To make an appointment, you can call 802-674-9235. That's the easiest way.
Great, thank you. So Barbara asks, is blue plastic recyclable?
That would want to know what kind of blue plastic. I guess it depends on what color, what's the number on the bottom, or what's the number on the container. If it's a number 2 or a number 1, yes, it's recyclable.
I can unmute you, Barbara, if you want to clarify.
Thank you so much. Honestly, I don't have one in my hand right now, but I buy mushrooms at the store and they come in there. Some kinds of produce come in these blue. It's a nice sort of royal blue.
Yeah,
But,
yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep. If it's look at the number on it, Barbara. If it's a 1 or a 2, it doesn't matter what color it is.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much.
Yep.
All right, so Fred asks, those skinny receipts one receives at CVS, some co-ops, some grocery stores like Shaw's. Someone told me these are not recyclable and they should be trashed. True or false?
Hate that question. Um, they used to be not recyclable. I believe that Casella now takes them. I would call Casella and ask them. I know that the 2 co-ops, the White River Co-op and the Upper Valley Co-op, print on it's something BP free paper, and those are recyclable. I put all of mine in my paper recycling. Don't tell anybody. But if you really want to get an answer, go to the source and ask Casella, because that's where it's going to end up, with Casella.
Great.
And let me know what you hear for an answer.
Yeah, let us all know. I'll email everybody. Deborah says, my metal and plastic trash can recently broke. Does that go in the trash?
Metal and plastic. I'm assuming this is one container that has metal and plastic on it. If you can take the metal off, you can take it to, it can be scrap metal, and that could go to the Hartford transfer station has a scrap metal container. Also, Able Waste in Bridgewater, at the Bridgewater Town Garage, I know they have a scrap metal container at their Saturday drop-off. The plastic is trash.
Got it. Okay, great question from Todd. What amount of grease coating on plastic is tolerable? E.g., oil-based salad dressing leaves a residue that many people do not wash out of bottles.
I'm guessing that in an industrial process, that probably comes off because it's probably super, super hot, soapy water. But again, I would advise rinsing it out with hot water as best you can.
Right. Is there any way to recycle window glass?
No, not that I know of, unless you live in Thetford and they'll take it in their glass container. I would consider window glass to be construction debris, and that would need to go to the Lebanon facility.
Got it. Thank you. Ham, all your answers to my difficult questions have been great. It's a mess. So how do we convince our fellow citizens to use less of what is without doubt destined for landfill?
Say that again, just the question.
How do we convince our fellow citizens to use less of what is without a doubt destined for landfill?
Well, I don't know. And if you find get an answer to that question, please let me know, because that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. Um, you lead by example. Um, you can gently nudge people like I did with my to-go-ware. Um, when you're in a restaurant and you have a doggy bag and they give you a black plastic container, you can say, "Hey, did you know that black plastic is not recyclable anywhere? Have you ever thought of um, changing to something else, not styrofoam?" Or when you get a straw in a restaurant, if they offer you a straw, say no, thank you. Or if they give it to you anyway, you can speak to, the restaurant manager afterwards and say, please don't do this. If somebody wants one, ask, but don't just automatically, little things like that without being obnoxious. I honestly don't know. It's not on a lot of people's radar. I mean, I sort of live and breathe this stuff. So I question why sometimes people don't get on board, but it's it's frustrating, and I think it's just for a lot of people, they're struggling to survive and get through a day, and this is just not one of their priorities. I had a cousin who raised 3 kids, and every time I went to visit her, I would be pulling all the recyclables out of her trash, and she just said, "Ham, I've got 3 kids. I'm a single mom. I can't do this." And so I would say, "Okay, I'm going to take it all home to Vermont." And I would. And then lo and behold, her kids are all in their late 30s, 40s now, and they're all big recyclers. So you can thank Uncle Ham for that. Um, just be kind and be pleasant about it and lead by example. One thing we're running out of time. That's terrible. One thing I wanted to throw in here, couple of things. For some reason, I've gotten 4 emails this week asking me when the next styrofoam collection event is. Let me be clear. The solid waste district does not run those events. We help promote them and I work at them, but we don't organize them. And here's what I'll tell you, and this will be posted somewhere. The town of Hanover is going to have one in January or February to take care of all the stuff that comes for Christmas and the holidays. They're collaborating with Norwich. I don't know if they are inviting people from outside of those 2 towns or not. Stay tuned to the newspaper or the listserv. Next spring, there's supposed to be one in Lebanon at the Lebanon High School. Unfortunately, the woman who has been organizing the ones for the last 3 years has stepped down, and nobody has stepped up to take her place. So stay tuned about that one. I know there will be another one next August at the Mascoma Bank on Sykes Avenue in White River Junction. And that one, we had 271 vehicles in 2 hours and packed full 326 cubic yard U-Haul box trucks full of it. And we drove it to a densifier over in Guilford, New Hampshire at their transfer station. And it's all being made into home insulation. Some of it is being shipped down to North Carolina to a retired vet who's building tiny homes for veterans. So if you can hang on to your styrofoam till at a collection, please do, because it's going to be made into something great and it's not going to go to the landfill. The other thing I wanted to say is I am always amazed at how many people do not know what to do with the following items: batteries, bulbs, paint, electronics, thermostats, and thermometers. There have been programs in place in Vermont for 6, 7, 8 years. Your paint can go to a participating hardware store or transfer station any time of the year. Heather, something else for the chat. Go to paintcare.org and you can look up, put in your zip code and find out where the places are that you can take your paint. And you'll learn all the rules. If your paint can is leaking, rusted, or without a label, it is considered hazardous waste and has to go to a hazardous waste collection. Otherwise, it can go to one of these drop-off locations. We're talking latex, oil base, paint, stains, all the rest of it is not allowed in the landfill. That's paint. Fluorescent bulbs, take them to your local transfer station or hardware store. You can go to, I think it's called Lamp Recycle, VT Lamp Recycle. Again, it'll give you a locator where you can take those. Electronics in Vermont, televisions, computers, and anything having to do with a computer, including desktop printers, are considered covered electronics. You should be able to take those to any transfer station for free and recycle them. All other electronics, anything with a cord, you may get charged a very small amount for that, but none of that should be going in the landfill. Thermostats, the old round thermostat, I have one in my living room. They have liquid mercury in them. If you want to switch out to a digital one, call our office and we will tell you what to do with thermostat. I think they take them at the Hartford transfer station, but you do not want to throw them in the trash. And thermometers, same thing, thermometers that you put under your tongue or somewhere else. Most of them are digital now, but some of you have old ones around, and if there's silver in them, that's liquid mercury, and you should turn those in. Again, call our office. So that's my plug.
That is great. Thank you so much, Ham.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you, everyone. These were all really great questions. I'll send out a follow-up email with some of these links. And I just want to mention again, our next Green Drinks event is a sustainable crafting and community gathering on December 7th. And should be a wonderful afternoon of just collective joy. So hopefully you all will join us for that. And thank you so much, Ham. It has been really great having you with us again. And yes, yeah, go for it.
Can you put my contact information in the chat?
Absolutely.
Um,
And I'll send it out in the email also.
I live for your phone calls and emails. So please contact me if you have any questions beyond tonight. After tonight, you should know everything, but I'm happy to answer questions. So thank you, Heather and Ginevra and Sustainable Woodstock. And thank you all for coming. I hope you got something out of this.
Thank you, Ham.
Stay warm.
Thanks so much. I just put your email in the chat for everybody. Oh no, it just went to Richard. Hang on. And then I'll also send this in the follow-up email to everybody.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Great. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.